and anxiety, this is the third webinar in the Webinars for Wellness series. This series is brought to you by The Gift of Learning. My name is Eesha Kulkarni, and I'm one of the co-founders of The Gift of Learning. The Gift of Learning team also consists of the rest of the executive team, which has Shivangi Gosain, Arya Nalavade, Amruta Rajeev, and our manager, Shirshika Milapali, and our team of ambassadors. Before we begin, we would like to give some background about the Gift of Learning. The Gift of Learning is an online tutoring organization that is working towards making educational resources available to everyone. You can be part of our mission and register to become a tutor through the Google form in our Linktree. More information about the Gift of Learning can also be found on our website or our social media platforms. We are active on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Our website link has been updated, so please check it out using the link on the screen. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please send them to Arya Nalavade. The Gift of Learning also brings many educational webinars, and mental health awareness is very important. Because of this, for our webinar series, we are partnering with mental health organization Sticker Speaks. Sticker Speaks, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. My name is Asta Shah, and I'm one of the co-founders of Sticker Speak. Our team of 4 started out as part of the Junior Achievement Company program. And dedicated to our social cause, we continue on our own, trying to share information with more teens and parents. Sticker Speak is a local student-run company aiming to decrease the stigma surrounding mental health through education and awareness. We create uniquely designed stickers representative of mental health. Our stickers are embedded with QR codes, and when scanned, they lead to our site, stickerspeak.com, where you can find a professionally curated list of free mental health resources and information. We're doing an awesome self-care kit giveaway filled with essentials like candles, face masks, and all our stickers. All you have to do is follow our Facebook or Instagram, like the giveaway post, and tag a friend in the comments. Thank you.
All right, so thanks for the introduction about Sticker Speaks. So today we are excited to have Taylor Owens and Lo Easton here today for a webinar. These two amazing educational TikTokers make relevant and meaningful content for students. So Taylor and Lo, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, especially on a Sunday. Really excited to be here. I am an educational TikToker. I promote a lot about like scholarships and kind of school tips and everything in between. I am kind of the main person behind Finesse Your Education, which is a business I started to help students finesse their way to a free education by winning scholarships. I started Finesse Your Education mainly because during my journey of like going through the college process and trying to find out how to pay for it, I was pretty much alone. Like as a first generation college student, like my parents really couldn't help me, like guide me through the process. So I had to kind of figure it out by myself, and kind of dealing with all that stress and anxiety. Once I graduated debt free, I wanted to be able to help other students kind of make it through also debt free with scholarships and not feel so alone. So that's kind of a little bit about me and Finesse Your Education.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Taylor and I'm a junior at Cornell University in the School of Industrial and Labor Relations. And I basically studied the concept of work and how people work. And during quarantine this past year in June, I started TikTok to offer advice and just real raw accounts of what the college application process is like, what parts are important, and also that allowed me to give all of my amazing like study tips that I've learned over the years from just trial and error and from my friends as well. And it's really, I like for my page to be just a one-stop shop on college apps, how to manage your time in your studies, and even beyond that. And there are a lot of tips that can be applied to other areas of your life as well. So I'm really excited to talk with everyone today and share some tips on how to manage your test anxiety and even anxiety that you just have around school.
Thanks for the introduction. So let's get started now.
So I think a lot of times test anxiety comes from this one question is like, well, what if I get to the test and I just do not know the answer? And I definitely experienced that a lot through high school. And I would say the method that I'm about to share with you guys has really helped me through a lot. When I was a junior and I was taking my SATs, within the first 30 minutes of the test, a fellow test taker who's actually sitting next to me actually like threw up in the classroom into the test. And I had the entire like 2.5 hours, 3, however long the test is, to go. And I was anxious. I was like, I'm distracted, but I still need to take this test. And there were questions that I had practiced and I knew the answer to, but suddenly I was like, I genuinely don't even know what to do at this point. So a little system that I've developed is called DUB. And it basically stands for don't panic, use context clues, and brain dump. So first and foremost, when you get to the question, if you do not know anything, like you don't even know what chapter this came from, what concept it's coming from, don't panic. Make a mark, flag it if you're taking a Canvas test, or circle it if it's a paper exam, and come back to it later, because a lot of the times what will happen is little droplets of nuggets will be placed throughout the rest of the test that will help trigger some things in your mind that might help you develop an answer if you come back to it. So, and also tests are typically timed, so it's not a good use of your time to sit there and just try to bulldoze through it and try to figure out an answer. So then you use context clues, same thing, looking at other areas of the test, look at the wordings of the questions, especially if it's like a true false. Words like never and always are very strong words because things typically aren't always true or are never true. There's usually exceptions. So using context clues like that to start weeding out some of the answers that you know are going to be incorrect. And after you've done that and you have a little bit of a lot of time at the end of the test, if you do have extra time, that's when you go back and brain dump and you use all those context clues and you just come up with a list in your head of things that you know for sure about this topic and pull from there answers that you know are definitely wrong, answers that could be true, but you might need more information, and that'll help you at least narrow the pot of answers, so to speak, that you'll be able to pick to answer the question that had previously you didn't really know the answer to. So hopefully that'll give you some direction on what to do there.
Okay, and I wanted to come in and kind of talk about, especially dealing with the topic of like academic anxiety and just dealing with the stress of like school. I am like in general just very like prone to anxiety and just being overly stressed because I just have the tendency to kind of let things spiral out of control. Over time, I've definitely like been able to kind of like reel that in and kind of have a better mindset. So I wanted to talk about this, especially like freshman, sophomore year of high school. I was in like a really bad place and kind of handling things like very poorly, and really had to kind of over time learn how to move towards a more positive mindset because just kind of being so hard on yourself, being so anxious and stressed, it's just not good like long term. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so like I said, like sophomore, freshman year, like early stages of high school, I was really in a bad place mentally of just really thinking that my grades define my intelligence. And then from there, because I based so much of my self-worth on like how smart I was, it like really started to affect me there. And so any one mistake, or if I was struggling in a course or something like that, it would really really pile up on me and just like put me in a really bad place. Another part of that is just like comparing myself to my peers, being in like being in like different like STEM programs, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, a lot of students in those programs are very like, these are my accomplishments. And like a lot of times they are trying to like one up each other, and then getting caught up in that environment was really bad for my mental health. And then also, again, just being overly stressed and letting one mistake kind of spiral me into this sense of like hopelessness and like, oh, I messed up one time and I'll never be able to like come back from this, when that's absolutely not true. That's kind of where I was earlier on in high school. And I had to really, again, just like pull myself out of that mindset. So from here, I went to, if we can go to the next slide again. Okay, so I started to kind of really try to develop more of a positive mindset, a positive outlook, which for me was not defining my self-worth on grades. Like there's more to me besides doing good in school or a certain GPA, like not letting that GPA especially like equate to my self-worth. I had to kind of separate that and also, you know, celebrate other parts of myself. And again, like just focusing on myself, not trying to, you know, beat someone else or do better than someone else. You really have to dig deep and focus on what can I do? What is my best? And let me do that. And then really most importantly, and this is something that I always try to do in my life, is just focus on the bigger picture and just set realistic goals for myself. So, you know, if you mess up once, if you do something like, let's say you did a presentation and it wasn't that good, or you messed up on a test, or, you know, you didn't do so good on a quiz, it's like down the line, is this really going to define who you are? Is this going to stop you from achieving your goals? Like, you know, a lot of times the stuff that you think is so big really isn't that important. Like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, like really big picture. And then also setting realistic goals is just like, think about what you are capable of. Don't try to measure yourself up against someone else. Just like do your best. Again, like that's like the one thing that I want to kind of communicate during this like webinar, is just focus on doing your best, like do you, and do not compare yourself to other people. Next slide. Okay, so I want to talk about some thought exercises to try, because it's easy to say like, don't be anxious, don't be stressed out, but you know, words can only go so far. And especially if you're already in a place of just being so just kind of spiraling into anxiety, being overly stressed, it can be hard to kind of pull yourself back from that place. So these are a few things that I do to kind of help myself. One really important thing that I learned is if you're stuck in a place of like, let's say you're trying to like work, but you are constantly having different things like pop into your head. This especially like will happen to me. I'm trying to work on a project and I'm like, what if I fail? What if, you know, this happens? What if whatever? Like there's just so many things spiraling in my mind. One thing that I'll do is I'll take like either scraps of paper, index cards, whatever, and I'll write down like every fear, every like anxiety in my mind. And then when I'm working, and if that thought pops up again in my head, I just like tap that card and it's like, hey, I thought about you already. Like I've thought of the worst case scenario. I've thought about me failing, and like me cycling through this again and again, not productive. So it's like, look, I thought about you, I'm moving on. And it sounds like, it can sound kind of like cheesy, corny, whatever, but it really does start to be like, okay, like, again, this is not productive. This is not a good use of my time. Let me just kind of move forward from this. Because like the worrying doesn't help. Another part, sorry, the poll is on the screen. Okay. Another thing that I do is if I'm afraid of starting something, if I'm like, just like worrying about what I have to do, one thing I try to focus on is like, just do it poorly. Like sometimes you're so afraid of like the assignment and like you're worrying like maybe you're not going to be good at it. What if you fail, whatever. Sometimes just getting out that first draft, even if it's like truly like really, really rough, it gives you a place to just edit and improve over there. But if you just spend time like stressing about it and not taking action, then, you know, a lot of times you'll just procrastinate and sit on it for, you know, up until right before the due date. And then it doesn't give you time to improve. And it's just like, again, not a good use of your time. So, you know, don't be afraid of, have a rough draft, have a poorly done sketch, like do an outline that's again, really, really rough, but just have a place to start. And then again, if you are feeling stressed, if you made a mistake, you did not as well as you wanted to do on something, just ask yourself, like, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15, whatever, like, is this really going to have that big of an impact on my life? And that can be a good way to like start contextualizing things, and then like not make it so like this is the end of the world type situation, because a lot of times with school, it often isn't. So, and we can move forward.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a few tips, maybe a few stories on studying for STEM classes, which doesn't have to be specifically STEM classes. A lot of these can also be applied in other areas as well, but STEM is a really good place to start with these things because things tend to be more formulaic. So we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so with STEM or any class that has formulas, pay attention to those because those are more or less the meat and potatoes. They aren't the ends, but they are the means to the end. They are how you are going to get the answer. So when it comes to formulas, you just need to know what is it used for, and when do I need to use it? If you can answer those two questions, that's honestly half the battle. So from then, you obviously want to understand like what types of symbols do I need, what information do I need for these formulas. But I would always just write out a formula sheet, even if I didn't get it on a test. That's a great way to study. Just making your own formula sheet of everything you need to know, where it goes, what chapter it comes from, and everything like that, at the very minimum, just to keep yourself organized. Second part, vocab. I know this isn't really connected to STEM, or people like to think that, oh, it's just a vocab word, it's not going to be on the test, it's not important, but it is, because the vocab will help you understand the formulas a little bit more because you're understanding the moving parts of formulas. And the big thing with studying and test anxiety is you are going to be more anxious when you study for memorization versus when you're studying to understand. When you memorize, all you're going to do is get to the test. And if it's not worded in the same way that you studied it, you're going to get tripped up. But as soon as you understand the concept, the pieces can move around and you will still be able to kind of know what's going on. So that's where order comes to start to matter. What order do things in the formula need to go into? Because that'll help you, especially because teachers love to giving you a big old paragraph when really you only need 5 pieces of information. So knowing the order that they go into is very important for that. To understand, to make sure that the answer makes sense, and putting things in order is easier when you understand like the vocab and the formulas and things like that. And then application. The thing about STEM is practice is really what's going to make you comfortable. The more you do it and the more you're able to apply it to different scenarios. What happens when the equation is flipped? What happens if this number is negative? What happens? It's kind of like a what if. So all of the testing, like, oh, well, what if I don't know the question? Take the questions you do know and turn them into questions that you don't know. And that's how you study them. And you aren't going to get that tripped up because truthfully, teachers aren't that creative, right? Especially high school teachers. They're not really trained to like come up with these larger than life questions. To some extent, the questions that they're going to ask you are just regurgitation of questions you've already seen, just in a different light, in a different formula, in a different context. So when you're making up example problems or you're going through example problems, make little notes of, okay, this question is different from this question because X, Y, Z, or, oh, I always get tripped up on these types of questions. What's one thing I need to remember when I know I'm using this? So taking notes on your homework, circling things you always get wrong or things that steps that you tend to forget. And this is really important because especially in high school where you get credit for showing your work, being able to identify like, oh, even though it's a small error, small points can add up. So reflect on your own work. Don't make it so much as of, I just need to do the problems and go. No, like understand the problems, understand the moving parts. So next slide.
Okay, so this is my part. Scholarships, like I said, a huge part of what I talk about is scholarships. On my socials, the Finesse Your Education website and socials, I talk about how to get scholarships, and a lot of times I get kind of like the basic questions like again and again. So I wanted to just kind of cover some things to give you some context on like what scholarships are, how you can get them, who qualifies, and everything like that, because especially from what I've seen in my time of like being an educational TikToker, social media person, is that unfortunately there's a lot of students that don't have kind of like this basic information because they're not getting it in school. So we can move to the next slide. Okay. So yeah, frequently asked questions. The most basic question is, what is a scholarship? But again, it's not a bad question because oftentimes this isn't being discussed like in high schools, especially like in lower income areas where I came from. Like I didn't have like a lot of a background on what scholarships are. So essentially scholarships are free money that goes towards your pursuit of higher education. Oftentimes these are sponsored by like different organizations, businesses, like different like community centers in your area. Essentially there's different people that want to help certain students. It can be from a different background. They can be academic based. There's just a lot of things, but what you need to know is that it's money that you don't have to pay back that goes towards funding your education. And it's a really, really great way to not be in debt. Who can get one? A lot of people think that you have to be this like crazy genius, or you have to be like this star athlete, and that's like the only way you can get a scholarship, when in fact like there are scholarships for almost like nearly any category that you fit into or you can think of. Like there are scholarships for that. Like I said, there are academic based ones, so you can get scholarships based on having a high GPA and doing well academically, but you can also get scholarships just for participating in different organizations, clubs, sports. You can get scholarships for just writing a really well-crafted essay, or even there's video submissions you can do. There's scholarships where you don't even have to write an essay. It's just kind of like randomly selected. There are scholarships for different backgrounds. I mean, there's even ones for like, if you're a ginger, if you're a tall woman, if you're left-handed, like there's so many different like random categories. So truly, like who can get one? It's like nearly anyone and everyone that is pursuing higher education, you definitely can qualify. The next question, once you kind of realize that, okay, I'm most likely eligible and this is free money towards my education, is when do I get started in this process? And the answer that I'm forever going to stand behind is as soon as possible. Like as soon as you can get started in the process, go for it. I've had students reach out to me and say that they've gotten scholarships as early as 5th grade, which is amazing. I started like around my like junior year, but if I could have like started earlier, gave myself more time, definitely would have done that, which is why I'm so like adamant on telling students to just start as soon as possible. And how do you start? I think one of the biggest reasons why students who have information on what scholarships are, but are not actively seeking them, they're not getting started because they're overcomplicating the process, when in fact, every part of the scholarship process is something that you've either done or it's not that hard to do. So writing essays, you do that all the time for school. Potentially, like if you have an interview that you have to do for scholarships, like you're never going to have be able to escape doing an interview in life, like if you want a job or do other things. So doing scholarship interviews is a great way to get experience in that in general, and then also win money. And then searching and finding applications online. A lot of y'all have grown up with the internet, so navigating like Google and just searching for different awards. Like, it's not that difficult. All you need sometimes is just a little help to put you on the right path. So next slide. So like I said, Finesse Your Education, like my scholarship platform that I started, it's all to help you kind of find the right starting point and really kind of motivate you to start seeking those opportunities and getting scholarships. So if you want like a more in-depth guide on like how to start and how to approach scholarship essays and like just more information, you can definitely go to my site, finesseyoureducation.com. I also have a YouTube channel that I'm just starting up, but I will be posting like more in-depth tutorials because I do like the TikToks and those are great, but sometimes I need more than like a minute to explain something. So the YouTube videos, that's what they're for. And again, I'm always going to have like free resources because of where I came from. I know it's not always that easy to get access to stuff. So definitely I recommend bookmark the site. It's always going to be constantly updated with new stuff. So that's a really good way to kind of get basically get on the right path to winning scholarships. Okay. I think we can go into the Q&A portion from here because that slide is kind of help with some of the questions moving forward.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm a sophomore in high school, so I can like really feel my like stress and anxiety like going higher and higher with like each semester because like school is just getting harder from here. So these tips are incredibly useful, and I am going to be implementing, especially the SAT tip. When I take the SAT next year, I'm looking forward to using that tip as well. Okay, so let's first start off with some of the questions that were submitted through the Google form. The first question is, and I think a lot of us can relate with this, is how does someone stop thinking about a test once they turn it in?
Okay, I can give a bit of advice with that because again, like I said, I was like super anxious, still am, but I think you really have to, and it's hard to just be like, well, just stop thinking about it because it's not that easy. But one thing that helps me in situations like that is going up to the test, I make sure that, again, do the best that I can. And then once I go into that test, it's like what's done is done, essentially. Like there's no going back, there's no do-over. You just kind of do the best you can, put all the effort into that test. And then once you kind of get the grade you get, that's just what it is. I think instead of like being so fixated on what went wrong or what like could go wrong, just focus on like doing better next time and like moving forward. And that's honestly like the best take you can have on life. Like you don't want to be like bogged down by what could have been. Instead, just focus on how I can like continuously improve and just move forward.
Yeah, look at the future.
Yeah.
Okay, did either of you have jobs in high school or college? Or like really extracurriculars that took up a lot of your time?
Yeah, so a little about me in high school. I was a competitive dancer. I did volleyball, I did club volleyball, and I was doing track, and I simultaneously had like 2 or 3 jobs at a time. So I was super busy. But one thing that really helped me manage was you have to kind of talk to yourself. People think it's weird, but I think it's very productive. And you know what? The conversation on Sunday might not be the same thing as on Friday. So you really just have to start getting in the habit of like doing these pulse checks with yourself. Like this week, what do I have the time and the space to do? If you only have time and space to do your schoolwork and go to sports practice, maybe you take on less hours at your job that week, or you call out a day. If school's kind of slowing down and you're like, okay, well, I can use some extra cash now for when I'm not going to be able to work as much later. Maybe you don't have to put in overtime at the library and you can pick up more shifts. So I feel like we get into this habit of like our schedules are set in stone, but they're not. I can tell you as someone who's had internships at Fortune 500s, meetings get moved around literally all the time. No one's gonna think less of you. So it's okay for your weeks to look different. Your schedule doesn't need to be this stagnant thing. And honestly, also having conversations with the people you work with your teachers as well, being transparent, like, hey, I have a job. Sometimes they'll be lenient and give you longer extensions, or they will give you pointers like, okay, this is where you should focus most of your energy. So you're not trying to do this big, all-encompassing study session. So being transparent and also knowing that your schedule is literally yours. You can change it as you see fit.
Yeah, that's such a great tip, because a lot of times we do feel like our schedule decides what we do instead of we decide our schedule. So that is such a useful tip. Okay, so the next question is slightly more personal. And it's, what should someone do if they don't calm down easily? This person has tried doing exercises and they've tried multiple methods, but nothing seems to work for them.
I can talk about that a bit, definitely. Again, like I've said, I definitely am like prone to worrying, prone to anxiety, stress, overthinking, all of that, right? So for me, often, like, I've struggled with that too. Like, I've listened to like different self-care, like self-wellness, like podcasts and stuff, and I've tried doing the things that they suggest, and I'm like, okay, it's not working. What's going on? But you really do have to push to like try. Like, it's hard again to say keep trying, but I had to kind of like try a bunch of different things until I found stuff that did work for me and like did calm me down, because everyone's different. So just because someone's like, hey, do yoga, maybe that'll work, it might not work for you. You just want to try to like find different things that will help. And then beyond just like thought exercises, I know for me too, whenever I start feeling really, really bad, I kind of take like essentially like an audit of my, like, of just me, like, okay, am I drinking water? Am I sleeping? Like, can I go out and like go for a run, exercise, something? Because sometimes if I'm super stressed out, I stop taking care of myself, and then that makes it hard to do anything. So sometimes that can be really good too, is see how can you kind of just again take care of yourself and practice self-care. And self-care isn't always like put on a face mask and take a bubble bath. Like, sometimes it's like drink water, make sure you're moving, you're active, and you're like, try journaling, something like that, to just put you in a good space so you can handle things from there.
Yeah, so whoever sent that question and whoever else feels that problem, I hope that that tip helps change your life. Okay, so this next question is for you, Taylor. Is there a specific study method that you should use to become more productive?
Yeah, so I have really lately been on sort of like a productivity kick, in the sense that rethinking what it means to be productive. I think we live in an era where this hyper productivity is romanticized. I was listening to a podcast or a motivational speak the other day, and they were like, if you're not sleeping, you're not working hard enough. And I just want to say, like, that's not true. Like, don't sacrifice like your actual health for like anything, because I promise you, it's not important. And I was a sophomore in high school, and I took a history test on the French Revolution, and I literally had a panic attack. I was shaking, I was crying. Like, the girl across from me at the table was like, are you, like, leave, like, are you okay? I can confidently say, like, the French Revolution has never even been uttered in any of my classes, and I'm a junior in college. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, productivity is more of like, what is your goal for the day? If your goal is, okay, I just need to finish this English reading, and you do that, you had a productive day. But, you know, obviously not every day is as laissez-faire. So when it comes to me and scheduling my days, I look at what has to be done today. My to-do list is only things that are due today, or things that are of the most importance. If I have 3 things due today and 5 things due tomorrow, I'm only doing 3 things today. Like, I think maximizing productivity comes from like narrowing your focus into like the most immediate thing, because as soon as you start adding things and the further away you allow your mind to travel about due dates that are not here yet, the things that are due are now going to suffer because you can't even focus on them because you're focused on what's due next week or tomorrow. So really try to like narrow it down. I preach on my TikTok all the time. Try to make your daily to-do list 4 items at most. And that'll kind of help you weed out the things that aren't that important, or it'll help you identify where you can kind of cut corners and not do things at 110%, because not everything you do needs to be at 110%. Sometimes you can get it done putting in 60% effort, and that is fine. I'm also a big believer, don't put 110% into everything. That means you're doing something wrong. Because nothing should ever require that much of your effort every time you interact with it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what kind of follow up on that? I've heard a lot of different methods, like you study for like maybe 20 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. Do you use any pattern like that while studying?
So I have played around. So sometimes also know that methods aren't static either, just like your schedule. If I sit down and try and do an accounting problem set for 4 hours, it's not going to get done. I can't do it. If I sit down and try and write a paper for 4 hours, yeah, that might be able to get done. So knowing the things that you aren't naturally good at are the things you should be breaking up into chunks. The things that you are good at, or things that come more naturally to you, those are the ones that you can allot longer chunks of time for. So taking breaks is good, but play around with yourself and like your personal mental capacity on when those breaks should be. If it is every 50 minutes, okay. Sometimes that just means, okay, let me just work until I get distracted, and I'll just make a mental note of how long is it before I get distracted? And that can be your baseline. So if you get distracted every 10 minutes, maybe be like, okay, I need to start working for maybe at least 15 before I get up. And then creating your schedule based on where you are now. Because some of these techniques that people preach, if they've been practicing it for 4 years, yeah, they can work for 2 hours without a break. But if you've never done it before, don't walk in and think like, I have to study for 2 hours before I can take a break. No, everything should be customized to who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's a very different advice from what I've heard on a lot of like random productivity like videos, but that makes so much more sense. Like you do what is best for you instead of following this like given like routine of you study for 20 minutes and take this like break that's exactly 5 minutes long. So yes, do what is best for you. All right, so how do you stay relaxed before a test? Do you have any like breathing pattern that you go through? Lo, this one's for you.
I definitely do try to like take like deep breaths sometimes just to like calm yourself down. I don't know. I think I just try to focus on positive thoughts, positive thinking. Definitely. I just kind of go through sometimes even like that, weirdly enough, like that kind of those pre-test like fears or like that feeling. Sometimes it even kind of just like pumps me up to like go in there and do well in the test. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know if there's just one specific exercise. I just try to go into it like I'm here. One thing that helps me too is like thinking about like I just have like the next hour or so to do the test, and then after that I'm free from it, because a lot of times like the hardest part of the test is like the wait up like into going into it. You're just like stressed from that, but once you're there, it's out of the way, and you can just kind of walk away, whether you did good or bad. Like you did it, it's over, keep going.
I would also add to that, someone told me this in high school and I've done it ever since. And it's like, before the test, I do my very best to isolate myself. To isolate myself from the rest of the class. Like if everyone's standing outside the door, like, oh, what's the formula? Like, da, 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 da. there's always that discussion of one person that's like, wait, I thought it was this. And then everyone's now frantically trying to figure out who's right. And then you just mess yourself up. Like you knew what you knew before then. So sometimes like talking and being around people is what made me the most anxious. So I would be the person that would literally show up to the test like 30 seconds before it started. So I wouldn't have to like stand in front of the door with 12 other people like trying to review the material, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's a really good tip because I'm thinking, I feel like I have like unintentionally done that, but that has definitely stressed me out when people are doing the kind of pre-test talking and it's like, no, like I already have everything in my head and you are like throwing me off right now. So yeah, I think that's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that makes so much sense because I had this English assignment last week and it was pretty big and my entire friend group chat, we all had it on different days. So everyone was like really stressed up leading up to the day and we were all kind of like stressing each other out. But now that I think back on it, if I had kind of just ignored that group chat for a week, I probably would have been a lot less stressed out. So I love that tip. All right, Lo, I feel like you kind of already answered this question, but this is for both of you. What was the most stressful period of your life? Like, for example, was it like a specific year in high school, a specific year in college? And what do you wish you knew before going into that year?
Okay. I think for me, definitely like the most stress for me was like my junior and senior year when I first went into like the scholarship process, like applying for scholarships. It was like, it was like nearly like every week, like a panic attack, like crying, it was just for me, like without scholarships, like there was no way for me to like avoid debt. Like there was no other way to fund my like college expenses. So that's why I just had so much pressure. I guess like looking back, what would have helped? I wish if I could go back in time and just tell myself that it was going to be okay. But I guess in a more practical sense, I think just believing more in the process. I think I felt so hopeless because I didn't really know of anybody that had like paid off college through scholarships. I didn't know, I didn't just have like that support system, I guess. So I think, the cool thing that I see now is like, when I started social media and doing like Finesse Your Education, seeing people like Taylor, like doing other like educational, like social media things and stuff like, I wish if I would have like had that back then, I think that would have been really helpful too. So I think just believing more in the process, maybe doing more like research into people giving advice and stuff, maybe that would have like helped.
I would say the same time period, like junior, senior year of high school, which I think is the case for a lot of people. I was very stressed about like my grades and was this going to look good on my resume and like all of this college application stuff. And I would say, if I could like talk to my younger self, I would tell her like, don't be stressed. And not just like in the cliche way, but looking back, I wasn't stressed until like I realized everybody else was stressed. Like watching everybody else panic was like, I'm not panicking. Let me start panicking. I must be the one doing something wrong. So kind of thinking of myself like as a blueberry, like when you're blueberries, like when one molds, everything around it will mold, like start to mold too. So I think I just surrounded myself with a lot of people who were stressed out, or at least just like very vocal about it. And that's what made me stress and in turn made me worse. I'm the type of person where like the less I think about something, the better I'll do. So I would say that was the most stressful period of my life. So I would honestly just think like, if like, are you stressed or are the people around you stressed is a better way to look at it. And I think that's what I would say to that is just at least pay attention to your circle and who you surround yourself with, because that's probably like the biggest indicator of like how stressed you are going to be.
That makes a lot of sense. And according to the poll that was taken earlier during the webinar, a lot of people here are also sophomores. So we can hopefully use this and our junior and senior years will hopefully be a lot less stressful. All right, so the next few questions are scholarship questions. So scholarship is it sounds like a very stressful process. And this question's kind of for both of you. So how stressful was your scholarship process? Like what's like, if you had one word to describe how you felt during the process, what would the word be?
I guess like in the beginning for me, it was hopeless, but only because I didn't have any other example or like guide or someone else like to show me that it was possible. Like that's all I needed to see. And I didn't have that back then. So yeah, that's like how I was feeling back then. So
Taylor, do you have maybe a word? Or I'm sorry if I kind of just put up.
I would say like, yes, the scholarship process is stressful. Because I think it's basically like another admissions process all over again. And I would say I was kind of stressed because I was like, well, I'm not going to get like the Bill Gates or like the Coca-Cola ones that are like year one and done. And that's obviously not most people. It's like finding the little ones. And so for me, it was just stressful because I was like, basically just like trying to get everything that I could find. And I just felt like it was just a lot of extra Googling. And I think through like creators like Lo and a lot of other scholarship TikTok people that are thankfully like compiling all of this. But I just remember like going through, it felt like the deep web of like hyperlink after hyperlink. And so I was just stressed out because I was like, I feel like I'm just so far away because I just felt like it was never ending and they were just so hard to find.
So on the note of they're so hard to find, are there any specific resources or like specific websites to help find these scholarships?
There's a long list of sites that you can sign up for. I think one thing I want to talk about, I can talk about some other ones, but I think one resource that students like overlook is like honestly like Google. Like I get a lot of questions about like how can I find scholarships for middle schoolers? How can I find scholarships for Hispanic students, scholarships for first generation college students, whatever. And it's like, if instead of them typing it and sending that to me and they just put it into Google, they can start finding like a lot of different lists and resources like from there. And often when I'm finding different scholarships for students, like that's exactly what I'm doing. And it's like, if I could, you know, be put out of my job in that process of just searching for things, I'd be super happy. So don't overlook Google as a resource. And then there are, of course, a lot of different scholarship websites. I have a full list like on my website. I don't know if we put that in the chat or not, but like it has an updated list on where to find them. Yeah, that's kind of my answer to that question.
Website for scholarship resources. So there's a person who sent a question. This is kind of personal to them. But do you know if someone's CSS profile can hinder their ability to get scholarships?
So the CSS and the FAFSA, those two documents typically will only go to like the college. I've never had to like submit that to a scholarship. If a scholarship wants like proof of your income, they're going to ask for a tax return for the past year at the most. But like the CSS is kind of like a different umbrella of getting money for college.
Okay, yeah, so whoever asked that question, if that didn't answer it, please just reach out to Taylor or Lo here, and I'm sure that they would love to elaborate more on that. Okay, so is there a certain number of scholarships that a person can apply to per month?
Well, there's no limit for that at all. Like you can really truly like apply to as many as you want. For me, I was part of this program called Upward Bound Math and Science. And in that program, they gave us like a bit of information about scholarships, but essentially the goal that they had us set up for was like 20 a month. And the number can sound to some people like, oh, like that's a lot of applications, but truly once you get into the process, a lot of essays, you can start to repurpose them for like similar prompts. So that makes like the writing process really easy. And a lot of them are asking like the same questions essentially. It's like 5 main topics of like obstacles, challenges, like whatever. And you can really start to use the same things like over again. Also, there's a lot of different scholarships that require like a range of things. So some of them are more time consuming, some of them are a lot quicker, easier. So you can kind of find a balance between that so you can meet that goal. But definitely, find the right goal for you. Don't overwhelm yourself when you're first starting out, but definitely kind of you can work your way up to something like that.
Okay, yeah. We have another question that came in. When applying for FAFSA, is there any strategy that a person can use to get the most money from the school?
So I would say, one, the FAFSA is just like a very complicated document. Two, it's one of those things you can't massage it too much, otherwise like it's literally fraud. So like that's not the place to try and cut corners. But however, I would say like one thing a lot of people don't know is that like if you're like a single parent, or you're not you specifically, but like if you're the child of a single parent, or like one parent like does not financially contribute, make sure you get that like notarized. Things like that, like major expenses or like things that they're going to count as income but are not, make sure you get those things, type of things like notarized. I can think of like the parent one, and then another one that I've heard, it's definitely a lot harder, but if you have like any like expensive underlying medical conditions, sometimes you can like try and appeal that, for that to be taken into account when it comes to financial aid. But my biggest advice with FAFSA and CSS is like, don't cut corners. Because it gets compared to like the tax form too. So like they have a reference of if you did it right. And it's gonna hurt you more than it's gonna help if you try to like cheat the system, kind of. So that's when I would say like put more effort into finding scholarships. You also don't have to pay those back. So.
Okay, yeah, those are all the scholarship questions that have come in so far. So if anyone in the audience has any more scholarship questions, please continue sending them into Arya, and we'll ask them throughout the webinar. But for now, let's move on to more general school-related questions. Okay, so a lot of us cram for a test like the night before. So is there maybe a better way to do that? Or if we do end up having to cram, what strategy should we use to be the most productive and make the most of that time?
I would say like as much as possible, try not to cram. I know it's probably going to end up happening. I was really bad at that, especially in high school. Once I got into college, I was like, okay, there's some courses where like that's not going to like work at all. So definitely it's just a lot easier on yourself to just kind of split up time like day by day, find little pockets of time that you can start studying, tackling, maybe grouping different like topics together, like similar things, and going over that like one day, and then maybe next day, 2 days later, like going over something like else to build up over time. You're studying up into the test. That's like the ideal situation. But of course, if you find yourself in a place where you're like, okay, night before, I gotta go. For me, I try to focus on like, I really don't recommend cramming, but if you are in that place, I just try to focus on, okay, what are like the main things that I need to study right now that I need to have like an idea of, and kind of prioritizing it from there. But as far as like more in-depth advice with that, I just try to do my best like every time, but I don't have like a written out like system.
Taylor, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so for classes where I know either studying is going to be very time consuming, or the test is going to be hard, or I'm just naturally not that good with the subject, whatever. This is a time when I would tell you to like ASAP come up with like a list of things that like you do not know. So like I always go through like the chapter, the contents, the study guide or whatever, and I'll rank a topic like 1 through 3, 1 through 5. 1 being like, I would literally need someone to like hold my hand and walk me through this problem. Anything with like a 1, as soon as possible, those are the things you need to go to your teacher about, because those are the things that you're not going to be able to teach yourself. So if you're going to cram, and if you get to that point, at least you're cramming for things that you at least semi-decently know and can teach yourself. And I think that's where people go wrong. Like they start trying to teach themselves the concepts that they genuinely do not know. And that's when you need a teacher for that part.
Yeah, these are really good tips. Okay, so a question that a lot of high schoolers have is, how many APs is too much? And should someone like be taking a lot of AP? Are they worth it?
Okay, this is my input on this, but maybe Taylor has a different opinion. I'm not sure, but I get this question a lot, and it's like, it's not frustrating, but I guess it's like, you have to do what's best for you. So like, what's like a heavy course load for one person, like might not be that much for another person. Like it just really varies. And like, especially for me, like I took AP courses in subjects that I was confident in, that I knew I was going to do well in, and that it wouldn't like weigh me down too much. But for subjects like, you would never catch me in an AP physics, like physics course. That's just not me, not for me, can't do it. So for another student, that might be easy. So it really just depends on what can you handle, what's your schedule like. Are you in like a ton of organization, sports? Like you have to just like take a look at your schedule and really be honest with yourself on what you can handle. And that's like the best advice I can give like with that.
Kind of a similar point of like, I did not take AP Chem, AP Physics because I did not care. I don't believe in doing things that if I would not do it willingly, I'm not like, why would I force myself to do it? So definitely don't take APs in classes you already don't like, just to try and like, to be honest, your weighted GPA doesn't mean a lot. It's a cool thing to say, but like in the grand scheme of college admissions, they're either going to already recalculate your GPA or they just look at the raw one. So trying to weight your GPA isn't really going to do anything. Also, if it's not going to be a prerequisite and you can't get credit for it in college to opt out of a class, don't take it. So that should be like your first and foremost foundation. And that's going to force you to also specialize in areas that you are good at and develop those skills, as opposed to trying to become a jack of all trade, because that's not a good way to use your time either.
Okay, so someone sent in a question specifically for Taylor. This person says, I have an opportunity to take harder courses, the IB diploma program, that will further my education. I have good grades and everyone's telling me to do it. And it's great for preparing for college, but I don't think I will like it. And I think it would be too stressful for me. So do you recommend that this person takes it or not take it?
Don't take it. If you don't like it, don't take it. If you can take advanced classes in another method, I would suggest doing that. If you can't, then definitely run this by like your college guidance counselor, and also like pay attention to the schools that you want to apply to, where that could be a make or break factor. But largely, like if you just truly don't want to do it, use that extra time to like beef up another part of your application, like get a job, start a club, like become active in another area and focus on a different part of your college application, instead of like trying to force something that realistically every other applicant's going to have. Focus on the part of your application that not every student's going to have.
Okay. Another question that came in is, how do you suggest we build relationships with teachers for recommendations? This is for both of you.
Definitely, like, for a lack of a better word, you kind of want to like be in their like face about things, like definitely like ask questions. I know it's like it's definitely a different world now with like online courses and stuff, but ask questions in your Zoom classes, like reach out even if you don't have like that crazy of a question, like just to be on the teacher's like radar so they are aware of like you, and when you reach out to them for a letter of recommendation, it isn't like it's like, who is this person that's wanting me to do something for them. Again, things are a little weirder because of people that may be in online courses, but you do have to just find a way to work around that. And then also, if you're in a position like where you have to ask for a letter of recommendation, and let's say the teacher isn't like that aware of you and like your goals and stuff, even if they do know you, like the best practice is to, when you are approaching them like for a letter of rec, you're giving them some type of like CV, student resume, something that like gives an outline of what you are a part of, your academic profile, like all like the stuff that they need to kind of get an understanding of you as a student. And that's also like specific things that they can mention in your letter of rec. So it sounds like more of a personal letter, even if they don't have that close of like a student teacher relationship like with you. So yeah. And I do also, just to add, I have like a guide for how to approach like the letter of recommendation on my blog, on my website. So that might help too.
For me, I think a tip that I give for letters of rec, and I did it, works for me. I've also had a couple followers reach out to me and tell me that it worked for them as well. So if there's classes that you didn't do well in, but like you put in the effort, like you went to meet with the teacher or things like that, don't overlook them as a source of a letter of recommendation. The 2 letters of rec that I had for college that got me into Cornell and USC and NYU, one came from the teacher I had the lowest grade in, and one came from the teacher that I had the highest grade in. And I think the one that I had the lowest grade in, that letter had more character in it. Because they can speak to your adversity. So when it comes to letter of rec, don't just automatically go to the teachers that like you have an A in, because realistically, those might not be the teachers that you have had the most conversations with, or they might not have seen you develop in any like, I don't want to say meaningful way, but at least to the degree that a teacher that saw you struggle and kind of like fix yourself would. So go to teachers for classes that you might not have gotten the highest grade in, or also just go to teachers that you talk to frequently. And they don't always have to be teachers either. If you have like community leaders, they can also write you letters of rec as well.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty good advice. So our next section of questions is the SAT and ACT. Did you both take the SAT?
I took both, yes.
Yeah, I took
Both. Cool. Okay. How many times did you take the tests?
I think I just did like once for both of them. I don't think I did any repeats.
So my school made us take the PSAT and the ACT Aspire, I think that's what it's called. We had to take those our freshman and sophomore years of high school, and they kind of gave us a score that's like, if you were to take the SAT or the ACT, this is the score you would get. So that was like my first time like kind of being familiarized. The number of times that I took like the real versions of those was 2 and 2. So I took the real SAT twice and the real ACT twice.
Okay. You're both in college or like out of college, so like your SAT was kind of a while ago. But while doing the reading section, did you first read the passage or read the questions?
It's been so long since I've been in high school.
You can answer this question as for like maybe some other English test. Do you like first read the passage or do you read the questions first?
I think I definitely like, I think I take the question, like look at the questions first and kind of see what to like basically look out for. It's been like a minute since I've taken like a test again. But I would say questions. That's my answer for that.
So the way I approach it for the SAT is different from the ACT. So for the SAT, there's always like 3 or 4 questions that like ask you like specifically on line 31 through 35. What does blah, 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 blah mean? Like I'll look at the questions for like the specific line numbers that I'm going to have to reference, and I'll mark those first. But then for the ACT, I would skim it first, answer all the questions I could skimming it, and then like go back and try and fill in the blanks. So I had 2 different approaches for the 2 different tests.
Which test did you prefer taking?
I stuck with the SAT. That's the one I ended up submitting.
No, I have like no preference of the SATs and the ACTs. Definitely, I wouldn't go back and like redo them because like I wouldn't want to put myself through that. But I think like I was like very ill-equipped with like how to approach them. So it was definitely just me like trying to do my best and like going from there. So that's why like as far as like strategy and like an approach, I went in there just fighting. That was my strategy, and like I went from there.
How long did you guys prep for the tests? Or like, did you not even prep for them?
I did some, I had like it was like an SAT prep book that I went through, and I spent like, I guess a few weeks with it. I'm not entirely sure like on the timeline. And then for the ACT, I think actually with my school, we did like a practice ACT. It was either the ACT or the SAT, but like that was essentially like my extent of like studying for it.
Yeah, I studied. So the way I did it was I would take the test without studying first. I would get those scores back. You can pay extra money to like, I think it's like $12, at least at the time, to like get your score report, and it'll tell you like which specific questions that you got wrong. I recommend getting that at least for just like your first go round if you can. And then I took that score as like a baseline of like, okay, I need to study like this more and this more and this more. I would take the tests like 3 months apart. So I always took one like in the beginning of summer and end of summer, or like very beginning of the school year, and then like again, like at the beginning of the second semester. So I would say at least give yourself like 3 months to try and like study for them. But obviously like the more time you spend with it, the better.
And how did you guys manage studying for the SAT and then managing school and your extracurriculars?
I think for me, like because I was involved in like a lot of extracurriculars and like doing school and like just having a busy schedule. I think in general, just being like very intentional with your time and like really just using like the time that you have to the best of your ability, just like setting a schedule of like, I'm going to work on studying for the SAT after school, like, or just planning that time and then acting on it basically.
Yeah, kind of similar for me. I, at least in high school, like my schedule like depended on the seasons. So my less busy seasons is like when I would do the bulk of the work. So like spring or summer. But that also takes like knowing yourself and like planning ahead. So if you don't play a winter sport, but you play a spring sport, like you should probably study more in the winter than you would in the spring type of beat.
Yeah, and well, you both took the SAT and ACT, so do you guys recommend that people take one, or do you colleges prefer one over the other?
When I say it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, because the tests are kind of like the ACT is pushed very regionally, like in the Midwest, but like West Coast tends to be like more SAT. And it's not that the colleges prefer one or the other, it's just that like high schools sometimes will just have, it's more like your high school has like a stronger affiliation with one over the other, but like in the terms of applications, like it doesn't matter, it's measuring the exact same thing.
Yeah, my high school just pushed like for both. But in terms of like which one I enjoyed more, like they just both were like kind of tests to me. So no preference.
All right. So we're at our last section of questions. So if the audience has any questions, please continue sending them in and we'll ask them. But for now, let's move on to college apps. Okay. So what is the best way to manage your stress during college app season?
I would say like it's definitely stressful, but the one thing you can do to make it less stressful is like knowing your due dates. I think like that's kind of like half the battle because a lot of applications are all due on the same date. So like popular dates are like November 1st, November 15th, December 1st, December 15th, January 1st. Like if you know the 15th is coming up, like you know you have a due date coming up. If the 1st is coming up, like you kind of know you have a due date coming up. So have a list of like when things are due. Same type of deal with scholarships. Sometimes you're able to like repurpose essays and kind of like change some things around. With colleges, that's not always the best practice, just because you're supposed to show that you did research on the school. But if a lot of schools are going to ask like, what are your future career aspirations? Like, hopefully like your career aspiration would be the same regardless of like where you're studying. So like half the essay is the same and you're just changing like less instead of just writing it all from scratch.
Yeah, I think being aware of the dates is really important. That's like another common question. Like I'll get on like TikTok as students like, oh wait, when is the FAFSA due? Wait, when is regular decision? When is like just a bunch of questions about like the deadlines. And if you are staying on top of that, it might be able to ease a lot of like the stress around it because you're not feeling like things are just happening to you. Like you're prepared and you're like, okay, this is, regular decision, whatever, just everything like you're aware of it and you can kind of plan accordingly.
How early did you guys start writing your college applications?
So I went through like I was a QuestBridge finalist, so I did early decision for like, I guess you could say like the first round of like applying. But yeah, I guess I started like earlier. I don't know like the timeline, I guess.
So I started writing my essay. I finalized my list of schools that I was for sure applying to the end of my junior year. And I think that's key because if you're still trying to figure out where you want to go and do all of this, like that's honestly a lot. So try and finalize that list end of junior year. I started doing drafts of my college essay over the summer. I wrote 7 of them before I got one that I liked. So I would say definitely like give yourself a couple months to like kind of do some like practice runs because then you're going to be in the like situation where like whatever you have written is like literally what you have to submit and like that's not good. And I know like the whole like supplements aren't released until like whatever day. I think it's like August 1st, but like, yeah, that's true. But like the questions are basically the same every year. So for every school, know why you want to go there. Like literally that's a question like why NYU, why Cornell, that's always a question. Know why you want to go there, why you like the specific program and what resources you intend to use to achieve your goal. If you can at least know those 3 things for every school, you've probably attacked like the most 3 common supplemental questions that you're going to get. And then all you're doing from there is like writing the complete sentences to link all those things together. So definitely like summer before senior year, start making these like outlines and skeletons.
How many colleges did you both apply to?
For me, like through the QuestBridge thing, I think I did like the 12 schools that you could potentially match to. And then through like regular decision, I believe it was like 5 more schools that I applied to. So yeah, I was just kind of like shooting my shot at like a lot. So that's my answer.
I didn't do QuestBridge. I just did each of them. I used the Common App, but did each school individually. I applied to 10. I will say if I could have gone back in time, I probably would have applied to more because I think I let fear stop me from applying to some schools. So I did apply to 10 and I got into 8.
That's pretty good. Okay. So do you recommend Common App or Coalition application?
I did like when I applied regular decision, I went through Common App and that was pretty decent experience. So I'm not too familiar with what Coalition is, so I don't have background on that.
I've only ever used the Common App. I love the Common App. Everything's there for you. The questions are there for you. Literally all you have to do is push the button. So it's a lot less work, I would say. So definitely look into Common App instead of just doing it all separately. It's going to save you a lot of time and stress.
Okay. How did you guys make your application stand out? What advice would you give to someone who wants their application to really stand out?
Don't try and make it stand out. The more you try and make it stand out, it's either going to sound like very rehearsed, or you're going to like try and like, the more you try and like say the right things, you're going to start saying the wrong things. Same thing. So like essays, if it's like if it's the first idea that came to your mind about what you want to do for your essay, it's not a good topic because if you came up with it in 10 minutes, so did somebody else. And with like 50,000 applicants, like the same essay about a broken leg, like it gets old. So don't fly by the seat of your pants and just go with the first thing that comes to mind because that's never the right thing. That's always like the most cliche thing. So to make your application stand out is like literally think of the things that you probably would never tell people. And those are the things that's going to make you stick out. Same thing for like your resume and job applications. Like the more you say the things that like you would probably never like openly say to people, like those are the things. I know one of my friends wrote an essay about peanut butter and jelly and she goes to Duke. So like the things that you think are probably like the stupid ideas, like those are the good ones.
I think just something to add to that, I definitely agree. I think also this is one thing I see a lot, again, like on TikTok, is people will assume like if you have like a really like tragic like story or thing that you went through, like that's gonna win you the scholarship money, that's gonna get you into college. But those are not always like just automatically like, yep, that's the one, especially if you are giving just like a really tragic story with no like way that you've overcome it. Like if it's just like a sob story, that often can kind of make like the reader, whether it's for like scholarships or like college essays, kind of like uncomfortable, and it's not always the best angle to go with. So I think sometimes people think like that's the way to stand out, but you never want to make people feel sorry for you. If you are going to go for like the approaching a difficult topic, you definitely want to come out like the hero of that story. But also, again, like with what Taylor's saying, like it can be about something that you never would have thought about, like, you know, the peanut butter sandwich example, and like really get creative with how you are like answering prompts. So, yeah.
Okay. We have one more question that came in. I believe this is the last question unless the audience sends any more in. So if you have any questions, please quickly send them in. But this question is more about, it's about how do you suggest we look for programs or internships to pursue over the summer?
Things are a lot different right now just because of the state of the world, Corona. So it's hard for me to give advice just because I didn't have to kind of navigate that while I was in high school. But I can say just get like really or be just really resourceful with how you are looking for stuff. I got my first internship in high school from just like a random like this woman. She was into like social media and event planning, and she put out an ad for like she was looking for an intern, and that's what I wanted to be involved in. So I like did that, and that just happened to be like I think my mom was following her and she suggested that. But you can be looking like searching for stuff like that, like if you want to do social media or whatever field, like whatever internship, and like I guess just be really kind of active in doing that. And there's also, you know, virtual things that you could be involved in, so that could be something too.
Yeah, like be resourceful. To like the successful people in the world are not the smartest or the richest, they're the most resourceful people. So if you're really looking for an internship, I would say get acquainted with the fact that like you might not be getting paid for it. So ask yourself, like, do I need a job or can I have an unpaid internship? And sometimes you can, if you already work somewhere, you can go to your boss and be like, hey, like, I think I might want to pursue a career in this. Can I shadow this part of your job for a day? Or going up to someone at somewhere you already work and be like, hey, like, could you teach me this really quick? And like, kind of like offer to like do things for people that you already know. And, you know, they could end up writing you a letter of rec or like telling you like, okay, yeah, like I'm willing to allow you to like take on this responsibility of my job. So like for people that you already know, jobs that you already have, connections that you already have, like reach out to them and be honest, be like, I want to work in like finance. Can I just like see like how you do like your accounting for like your restaurant, stuff like that. So utilize your network, utilize your resource, like, you know, people you know people. So don't discount that either.
And the last question for today is, how important are doing scholarships or finding a job, extracurriculars, how important are these to do in high school?
Well, definitely for something like scholarships, it's really like, how important is it to you? If you know that you don't have any other way to like fund your college expenses, or you really want to avoid student debt, then like that would be a super high priority. Also kind of like similar with getting a job, it's like, is that something that you actually like need to do? I think the question is more like for extracurriculars, like the importance of that, and like I guess how that would help you stand out. I think again, like whatever you have time for, what you want to get like involved in, I think you should do. I don't think you should force yourself to be in anything that you don't have time for, or you have no interest in doing just to stand out. But definitely, I think it really depends on what are your goals, what are your needs, especially financially, with scholarships, and you kind of go from there.
Same thing. I think that question touches on like 3 completely separate things. But in terms of extracurriculars, because I feel like that's the most universal part of the question, I would say those are very important. Those are your bells and whistles, right? Like when you submit your application, there's going to be thousands of other kids with the same GPA or nearly the same GPA as you. There are going to be thousands of kids that have the same roughly like test scores as you. So without extracurriculars and all of that, like you're essentially just like everybody else. You're just a number. Your extracurriculars are what makes you like a person and like an applicant.
Yeah. Okay. Those are all of the questions we had for today. I'd like to thank you both so much for coming here. All the advice you gave, your tips, strategies, these are all incredibly useful. And I'm sure that everyone here has learned something new. I definitely have. Yeah, so thank you so much. And everyone here, Make sure to go follow Taylor and Lo for more tips and advice. So thank you everyone for coming. Bye.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, guys.